today we are going to have SHIP, the SHIP organization.
Yep.
SHIP for those listening.
And I know you're not, I know you know I'm not a singer, but you know what I keep thinking of?
No. What do you think?
Salt and Pepper song. Let's talk about sex, baby.
We do not own the rights to that song.
Oh, yeah. I think I didn't sing enough of it that it counts.
Yes, we are going to be talking about sex today with the Sexual Health and Pleasure organization. I would be talking to the clinical director of SHIP, Miss Brittany Hunt.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
I got a lot of questions.
Okay.
And they're probably some juvenile. I mean, we're talking about sex, so of course.
Right. Yeah.
I'll have a few juvenile.
We should have like a giggle counter.
We should giggle and blush counter because I know what's going to happen in this. But you know, we shouldn't shy away from it. It's a very important topic, and it does have correlation to our mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully we get all this information out of Brittany and much, much more.
All right. Can't wait.
All right. Without further ado, today joining us on the Totally Preventable podcast, we have the clinical director of SHIP, Brittany Hunt. Brittany, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Thank you for joining us.
I'm very excited to be here.
We're excited to have you.
Good. So Brittany, to start off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to here?
Yeah, so I actually am a licensed independent clinical social worker in the state of Rhode Island. I'm originally from Portsmouth, and my first job in the sexual health field actually was at SHIP about 12 years ago. I was an intern the first year that they opened back in, I guess it was more than 12, it was 13 years ago, back in 2010. Our organization was previously known as the Center for Sexual Pleasure and Health, the CSPH. We had a rebrand as SHIP a few years ago. So I started there as an intern in college. I really didn't know very much about sex or sex ed at all. I went to Catholic school. So I was coming in blind to this organization with no idea about how to have conversations about sex and sexuality. And this organization really opened my mind to the world of sexual health. So from there, I went and got my master's in social work. I moved away to Louisiana for about 10 years and worked in the anti-sexual violence field. I worked in the reproductive justice field. And the whole time I always knew that I wanted to come back around to doing work around sexual pleasure. So I went and got some advanced training in sex therapy, and back in January of 2023, moved back to Rhode Island. I am thrilled to be back in my home state and got back together with this organization, which feels really wonderful and like a true full circle moment to now be leading the clinical program at SHIP.
Wow. Be an intern and then
Right.
now you're running.
Yeah.
It's cool.
It is cool.
Could you tell us what SHIP stands for in case people are listening saying, what are they saying? And what SHIP does?
So SHIP stands for Sexual Health Includes Pleasure. And also it's very fun that it gets to be kind of a nautical pun in the state of Rhode Island. So it works out nicely from us from a branding perspective. But our organization, our mission is to have conversations about sex. So to have conversations that are medically accurate, that are social justice focused, and at the end of the day, that include pleasure. When people talk about sexual health, usually, you know, we all remember sex ed at school. The most you're really getting is talking about preventing STIs and preventing unwanted pregnancies, which is extremely important. But we think that those conversations need to go further, and they really need to talk about sex as something that can be something wonderful in people's lives. It should be something wonderful in people's lives. It should be something that's affirming of their gender. It should be something that helps build relationships. And it doesn't have to be all condom on a banana type information. It can go so much further than that in a way that's truly holistic and recognizing what a complex role sex plays in people's lives.
Doing the investigations and the research for this podcast, I kept coming across culturally inclusive. Can you explain more about that and how it relates to sexuality education?
Yeah, so we really try in all of the work that we do to maintain a sense of cultural humility and to recognize that sex plays a very different role in really anyone's life. And a lot of that has to do with the culture that you're part of or the culture that you come from. So kind of maintaining a non-judgmental attitude about how sex looks different in different cultures. And that could be in different racial and ethnic groups, different religious groups, whether it's in the LGBTQIA plus community. Sex is going to be talked about in very different ways, and kind of honoring that all of those ways are valid and important. And more than anything, interesting for us to dig into and to look at how our cultures that we grow up in affect the way that we think about, talk about, and participate in sex.
I never really put much thought into the differences
In culture.
in culture
Mhm.
relating to. I never thought that.
Yeah, it absolutely makes a huge difference. I think one of the more obvious ways is religion. I grew up in a Catholic background, and definitely the way that Catholic people talk about sex is very different than the way that atheists talk about sex. And certainly, I say this lovingly for the Catholic religion, some of those ways are not always the most healthy or positive, but try to be as destigmatizing as possible and recognize that, when we're saying that we're a sex positive organization, we're not advocating for everyone to have sex. We're not advocating for people to have multiple sexual partners. If that's what they want to do, amazing, love that. But people who have maybe a more conservative or modest view of sex, that's fine too.
Where do you get to educate people on sex? I can't imagine school, hopefully schools are letting you in, but I feel like schools are in a pretty rough place right now, even allowing the littlest bit of sex education. So where do you educate people?
SHIP actually only focuses on adults. So we only work with people over the age of 18. So we love all of our partners in the community who are doing work with elementary, middle school, high school students, such important work. That's not really where we fit into the ecosystem. So our approach to sex ed is really trying to meet people at more of a community level. We do a lot of events at college campuses, which is such an amazing place to reach people. Generally, people are in college, out of the house for the first time, and really starting to explore sexuality as an adult. And that's such an exciting time for us to really be able to influence people in the way that they view sex and these topics. We also work with a lot of professional groups. So providing training for professionals to be able to work with whatever their client or customer base is in a way that is affirming and positive. So I'm a therapist by trade, work with a lot of people who are therapists, people in the medical professions, et cetera. Really anyone who wants to talk about sex, we will talk about sex with them. And then my role at SHIP is that I provide direct sex therapy. So having those conversations, which oftentimes are educational in nature, but on a more personal one-on-one basis. So, maybe working with one person to help them figure out their attitudes about sex or learn about healthy sexuality. And even though that's education just for one person, the hope is that those attitudes and those mindset shifts will kind of ripple out into the community. So we do have a bunch of ways, and we're a very small, scrappy organization. So we're always looking for new ways and new avenues to have these conversations in. We're super open to anyone who reaches out who wants to talk sex. We'll be there.
Looks like the coalition has a new partner.
Mhm.
Well, pull up a seat. You'll be at the next coalition meeting. So since you opened the door to your one-on-one therapies, and I'm guessing that you are hearing quite a bit. If you can give 3 of the biggest myths that you had to bust when it comes to sexual health, what would they be?
Interesting question. The 3 biggest myths. I think a lot of people come into my office thinking that sex has to look one way. They get these scripts from their culture, from our society, from pop culture about what sex looks like. Maybe that's from pornography, maybe that's from Disney movies, but people are coming in saying, hey, I was taught my entire life that sex was going to look like this. And it doesn't, or it does, and I don't like that, and I'm not happy with it. So helping people break down these scripts of what sex looks like and helping them really write their own narrative and write their own story about what sex looks like for them. which is much more empowering to be able to do things your own way, in a way that, feels good and feels affirming to you. So yeah, just a lot of letting people know that what you're seeing on TV, especially what you're seeing in pornography, that's not the norm. That's entertainment, that's storytelling, and that's not what sex looks like for normal people. And it shouldn't. It should look like whatever you want it to look like. So I think a lot of my work is permission giving around that. So that, I would say, is the number one myth, that sex has to look one way. Another myth, I work with a lot of people across the lifespan. So people who are coming into my office because they're saying, when I got together with my husband or my wife 30 years ago, sex was amazing. It did look like it looks in the romance novels. It did look like it does on screen. And now that I am entering middle age, now that I'm dealing with a chronic illness, it's different. And helping people to understand that sex is very much something that changes over the course of our lives. As our bodies change, as our minds change, as our hearts change, so too will the way we show up for our partners in the bedroom. So that's a really big conversation. And it's a tough conversation because it brings in oftentimes a lot of, existential dread for people, thinking about the nature of aging, the nature of mortality, et cetera, which are really big, juicy conversations. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think recognizing that the role that sex plays in our lives changes is, kind of scary, but I think also a really amazing opportunity, and something that can be really beautiful to help people navigate through those very, very hard transitions in life. So that's another big conversation that we have.
Okay.
I bet
I think third myth.
all your conversations are big conversations. I don't know. Although they shouldn't be, right? I mean, we should all feel comfortable talking about these things openly, or more openly than we do.
I hope that is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And sometimes the conversations are big. Sometimes it is, what is the nature of human existence? What is the nature of human relationships? Other times it's, have you ever tried lube? Sometimes they're very small conversations, and those small conversations on these taboo topics can be really, really powerful too. So yeah, helping people just with kind of more solution-focused, small behavioral changes they can make to have a more satisfying sex life. So yeah, not every conversation is about our own mortality, but some are. And I love conversation, all the ones in between.
All right.
On a whole, I know every conversation is probably different, but do you find talking to like 18, 19, 20-year-olds easier or harder than like maybe middle age or older people? I was thinking that, younger people probably have their mindset on certain things. But then why don't I think middle-aged people have that same mindset too? But I'm just curious, as a whole, are younger people easier to talk to these days?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because I think it's hard to make those broad generalizations. But I would say, in my experience, younger people tend to have a more flexible mindset when talking about these issues. They're not yet set in their ways, and still have, more of an openness and curiosity, as opposed to someone who's maybe been having sex the same way for 30, 40 years. So, I don't believe it's true what they say that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Absolutely not. But sometimes if someone is, more set in their way, and that sexual script that they've internalized has really built itself up in their mind, it can be harder to then dismantle some of those narratives that they've told themselves about their sex life.
I have 4 young adult children, and they have loosened up my conversation. Let me tell you, I would have never had some of the conversations they've had with my husband and I, with my family members growing up. So I'm not saying it's bad. It's just very different.
Yes, I do think it's interesting, because I do think younger people are more comfortable talking about sex than at least they were in my generation. I'm 33, and certainly in generations before that. But it's interesting because statistics show that younger people are actually having less sex than they really ever have, fewer sexual partners, and are having sex later than generations before them. So I think that's really interesting, that generally, in my experience with some of my Gen Z people, it's not that they are afraid of sex or that they think sex is this taboo, scary thing. They have these very sex positive attitudes and then are choosing not to have sex. And I think that's really interesting and cool.
I think they go together.
Yeah.
Being sex positive and choosing to be a little more abstinent or a little more choosy or whatever. Yeah.
I know for a lot of people, before you can get to that sexual encounter, there has to be that emotional connection. Can you tell us, like, what role does emotional intimacy play in enhancing like sexual pleasure, and how can an individual foster a deeper connection with their partner?
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, that emotional connection is really key to having a sexual connection with someone. Some people will use the term demisexual for people who need to have an emotional connection first before they experience sexual attraction or sexual desire. So that's just a little vocab word to put in your back pocket.
Like demisexual, you said? Okay.
Demisexual, yes.
Next team meeting, Greg.
There we go.
You're talking about
That's
it.
the next
I love
topic.
building someone's vocab. But yeah, I think a lot of people, whether they, have ever heard that word or use that word, do have that experience. And not to say that there are some people who don't need any sort of emotional connection to have sex, are very happy to have sex with someone they might not like at all, someone they don't know anything about them. But for a lot of people, I think especially in the context of a relationship, having an emotional connection is very important. I think specifically the way we've always talked about sexual desire is from a very traditionally male-centered model, which is someone sees a hot person and they become aroused and they're ready to have sex. That, kind of what I would call, to stereotype, kind of a teenage boy vision of what sexual desire is. And that's true for some people, but for most people, men and women alike, it's much more complex than that. Sexual desire is something that is built up over time as you grow to like someone, love someone, etc. It's something that's very influenced by culture. It's something that's very influenced by context. And it's not as simple as, oh, that person looks good today, I would like to have sex with them. There's so much more to it than that. And I hear that especially in a lot of my cisgender women clients, that they, need to see a partner in certain contexts. They are aroused and turned on by their husband when they see him interact with their family, when they see him get a promotion at work, something along those lines, where you'd think that's not something that's, about sex at all. But for a lot of people, that is what builds attraction, what builds desire. And sex is a very vulnerable thing as well. A lot of people might not trust a lot of people to share that experience with. And that makes a lot of sense, especially people who might have a trauma history. So being able to know that that person that you're about to have a sexual encounter with is someone who is going to care for you, who's going to treat you well, who's going to listen to what you want and when you want to stop, etc. That's something that can be really, really vital for people to feel safe in a sexual situation.
Can you tell us about the intersection between mental health and sexual pleasure?
Yeah, that is, I would say, what most of my clinical work is about, is recognizing that sexual health is a little piece in the whole picture of what a person is going through in life. And there are a lot of ways that sexual health and mental health intersect. The reason that I'm so interested in sexuality, I would say, is because it is very much, it's not just about your body. It's not just about your biological functioning. It also is about what's going on with your mental health, with your, anxiety, depression, etc., and what's going on more relationally. So more in like a cultural context, more in a relational context, what's going on with your partner, etc. So I think the fact that it is something that has all of these different components is what makes sex so fascinating to me. So I definitely see a lot of people who are having sexual issues with their sexual functioning, whether that's erectile dysfunction, having pain with sex, having low desire, inability to orgasm. Some of that might be biological. It might have something to do with the medications that they're on, their heart function, their cancer diagnosis, et cetera. And it also might be what's going on in their brain. If they are feeling unsafe, if they're feeling triggered from past trauma, if they're feeling really anxious, or if they're having thoughts of low self-esteem and negative self-talk, if that's affecting their ability to engage in sex. So it really is something that is this like interdisciplinary topic. And that is super interesting for me.
How do I know that I need to see you? How do I know that it's time that I go talk to somebody about this? How do I know that it's, I'm just in a funk and I'll get over it in a day or two? How does a person know when it's time to get you involved?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a lot of work that people can do on their own to explore their own sexualities. There's so many amazing podcasts, books, movies out there that people can explore on their own, talk to friends and family, etc. And I'm trying to think when someone would say, oh, I need the help of a professional. I'm not entirely sure on that, to be honest.
I like a good, fair answer. I like
Yeah.
that. I like that.
I think maybe you'll know it's right. Like you'll feel like it's affecting other parts of your life. And, I don't know, just like when you feel like, you're,
Time to see any therapist.
yeah, or like, you've had a prick in your knee and you're like, well, all right, this is affecting too many parts of my life now. I need to go see a doctor for it. I don't know. I think
So-
you just know.
The flip side to that, what one piece of advice would you give somebody who needs to have that conversation with their partner, who wants to open the door to a sexual conversation with their partner? What one piece of advice would you give them?
Yeah, opening up sexual conversations with partners can be really hard, even if it's someone who you fully trust and have been with forever. And that's because our society doesn't tell us how to talk about sex. It's still seen as something scary and taboo. And my advice would be to remember that you are with this person for a reason. Usually that's because you trust them. They are your ally in life. And for the most part, people will receive these conversations well. It might be hard to do, but if this is someone who you do trust and someone who respects you and cares about you, they're going to be down to have this tricky conversation. So that is my advice. It can be hard to do, but it's oftentimes worth it. And to, remind yourself of that strong base of your relationship, assuming it is a strong, positive relationship. If this is, a partner who maybe doesn't treat you as kindly, it might be not advisable to have some of these vulnerable conversations. But for the most part, to remember that the reason that you want to have this conversation is not only to improve your own experience with sex, but also to improve the relationship, to improve that connection that you have together.
I think a big fear is rocking the boat. I think that, if you've been in a relationship for a while and, everyone's status quo, and then that fear of trying to introduce something new, or the fear to having to admit, that I haven't had the pleasure that, the partner is having. And for a long time, I wanted to introduce this, but I didn't know how to say it. I think fear is what's blocking a lot of these conversations from happening.
Oh, definitely. I think I hear a lot of people saying, I don't want to offend my partner, to hurt them and make them think, oh, they're not doing a good job in the bedroom. And I think that, it's obviously very, very difficult, but that's not true. I am a strong believer that everyone is responsible for their own sexual pleasure. Everyone is responsible for their own sexual arousal. And really, it doesn't say very much about your partner at all. It says something about your relationship and the dynamic between the two of you. It's not that one person is doing something wrong. It's kind of, it takes two to tango. So by having these conversations, it doesn't have to come from this place where it's feeling like an attack, feeling like this kind of two sides conflict. Not necessarily. This is something that can be nourishing of the relationship and can be beneficial to everyone involved.
I can see where ego plays a big part in those conversations.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And remembering too that sex does change over time. In a relationship, everyone is changing all the time. The individuals are changing, and therefore the relationship is changing together. So being able to kind of ride those changes together is so important. And that includes changing your approach to sex oftentimes. So it's not an attack on either person. It's just saying, hey, this thing that was working before, it's not working anymore. So let's figure it out.
In a world where societal expectations and media often shape our perception, what is normal or ideal in sexual experiences? And how do you help individuals embrace their desires, preferences without any kind of judgment?
There is no right way to have sex. There is no ideal way to have sex. If everyone involved is a consenting adult, that's all that matters. So really anything that feels good for all of the partners involved. So that obviously means that consent needs to be present. Everyone there needs to be fully informed about what's going on, and they need to enthusiastically be present and want what's about to happen. That's the most important thing for a sexual interaction, is that consent piece. Beyond that, it's also important to have a sexual interaction that's as safe as possible. So that is mindful of STIs and unwanted pregnancy to try to mitigate those effects. If that's something that you're worried about, that is something that definitely will lead to sex feeling better, feeling safer. So that's important. And then I think an ideal sexual situation is something where all parties feel respected and honored in who they are as an individual. So something where, everyone is on equal footing, everyone's able to advocate for their wants, their needs, and to feel seen in that way.
Now, SHIP does a lot of training.
Yes.
There's webinars. What else? Yeah, I know you said that you do a lot of work on the campuses. What are the programs and services of SHIP?
Yeah, so we have really two big programs. The program that I run is our sex therapy program. So we offer individual as well as relationship therapy, both in person and via teletherapy. So we have 2.5 clinicians providing therapy right now, 2 full-time, 1 part-time. So that is definitely a great service if you're looking to have these conversations in a more one-on-one therapeutic setting. We also provide group therapy. So we're trying to do 1 group per season. We're currently running a therapy group for people in polyamorous or non-monogamous relationships. So that has been a really wonderful way to get therapy to a broader group of people, make things more accessible. And group therapy, it can sound kind of scary, I think, to some people, but I love group therapy. I think it's one of the most powerful therapeutic experiences a person can have, just to feel that community, feel that this is something that's not just affecting you. This is something that affects so many people. So we have individual group therapy, and then we also have our education program. So we, as you said, do a lot of work on college campuses. If you work at a college campus, please contact us. We would love to do our flagship program, which is the Study Sex College Tour, which is basic sex education that is LGBTQIA+ affirming, that is culturally inclusive, and that is medically accurate for college-aged individuals. We also have a webinar series that we've been doing, which has been really, really wonderful. That was born of COVID, when we couldn't do as many in-person events. Realized, hey, let's take it to Zoom. So we have a series of really wonderful speakers from all over the country on Wednesday evenings doing webinars that are at a very generous sliding scale for different price points for people. So that's been a great way to not only have these conversations about sex, but also to connect to other professionals doing this all over the country. So that's been really, really fun. I definitely encourage you to go to our website and look at those webinars. Some are focused a bit more towards professionals. Others are really broad, just something anyone would find interesting. So encourage that. And then beyond that, we are really, really open to coming to speak to any group who wants more information on sex and sexuality. So we've done presentations for medical providers. We do a lot of work with medical students, people who are training to be doctors. And yeah, really, really anyone. We love training. I think viewing training not just as a way to disseminate education to people, to give people information, but also to build community and to build connections, especially in such a small state where being able to pick up the phone and call that weird lady Brittany who talked at you about sex for an hour and talk through whatever issue comes up in your workplace, in your school, that is so invaluable.
When you go to colleges, do you do like a one-off training, or is it a semester-long class?
It's a one-off training usually.
I don't know, kind of safety freshman classes on all sorts of things, but that sounds like a great beginner to college, since you have so much autonomy in what you're doing, that you should know how to be safe and have fun and be respectful of everyone.
I think the consent question would come up a lot, like especially during that, because I believe you would mostly see that from a domestic violence or a dating violence organization, but you never see the other side of it. Not saying that, the other side of violence, but I'm saying the other organization talking about once you get consent and this is what a safe, healthy sexual relationship looks like. I think that'd be a great conversation to have on it.
Right. This training sounds like it would be it would lower sexual violence.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Theoretically, hopefully.
And definitely the local domestic violence and sexual assault agencies do an amazing job talking about violence prevention. I love all of the local organizations who are doing that work. Our programming, I think you can't say that you're doing sex ed if you're not talking about consent and sexual assault. So we definitely make sure that that's part of everything that we talk about. And exactly what you're saying, that talking about sex in a way that's positive and in a way that is affirming of people's humanity, right, that is going to send the message that consent is important, that sex isn't something you take from another person, something you get, some of these, kind of negative messages that a lot of us grew up with, that, sex is something that is dehumanizing, something that is degrading, but instead that sex is something that is, wonderful in relationship building and is a way to affirm another person's humanity. That is, gonna hopefully create some people with some much better sexual attitudes than the ones that a lot of us were raised on.
Can you tell us about having a sexual health and wellness plan?
I think it's important for everyone to think about the role that sex plays in their life as a holistic person. So just like you want to eat healthy, you want to exercise, you also want your sex life to be healthy. That definitely means if you're someone who is, of reproductive age, being aware of what form of contraception you would want to use, if any, understanding how to prevent unwanted pregnancy, how to prevent STIs, looking at, condoms, PrEP, et cetera. So having a plan of how you're going to keep yourself safe and healthy during sex. So that's huge. I encourage everyone as a form of self-care to think about the role that masturbation plays in your life. When we're talking about sex, we're not just talking about sex with other people. People have a sexual relationship with themselves. And I think that's something that people very much don't want to talk about or don't want to see as part of having a healthy and complete life. But masturbation is something that can be really positive to someone's relationship to their own body, being able to give themselves pleasure and understand their body's physical and sexual responses to different stimuli. So that's something that I advocate for, definitely as part of, a sexual wellness plan, making sure that you're honoring your own body in that way, whether you have a partner or not.
How do you combat the cultural diversity of things such as masturbation, where in some religions it may be taboo to do such? What's the pivot in that situation?
Yeah, that's true. If I'm working with someone who they say masturbation is absolutely a no for me, whether that's because of a religious belief or just because they're straight up not interested, maybe they're asexual, maybe that's just something that they've never really found pleasurable, then I would not, push for that. I think being able to honor that everyone's coming at all of these topics from a very different place. But also, I think being able to push back on, okay, this is the message I got from my religion that masturbation is bad. Let's be critical about that and let's think about why that is. Being able to be curious and ask questions and explore is, I don't think, something that, is going to destroy your faith or destroy your religion. I think it's something that only will make it stronger to be able to do that investigation and ask those questions for yourself, and then be able to come out on the other side and say, you know what, I agree with that. Masturbation's not for me. That's great too. But being able to, really ask the why. Why do we feel the way that we do about these things?
How do you explain to someone that there's a difference in, or is there a difference between sexually satisfied and sexually pleasured? Is there a difference between, or is it the same thing? Like, if I think I have a good sex life, and then I come and I speak to you, or I attend one of the SHIP webinars, and I find out that what I'm experiencing isn't pleasure. I don't know if I'm saying this the right way now. I'm saying it out loud. I know what I want in my head.
All along, and now you're like, oh damn, maybe
know?
I could be doing something better.
How do I know if I'm experiencing pleasure?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I understand what you're saying. I think for a lot of people, they think, as I said at the beginning, they think that sex is supposed to look one way. And really, satisfaction is different for everyone. People have all different reasons for having sex. Sometimes it is for an orgasm. But that's not the only part of sex that's pleasurable. Plenty of people have sex with no orgasm, whether they, just don't, or whether they can't. Some people are not physically able to. That doesn't mean they don't enjoy sex. There are so many other aspects of sex that can be pleasurable. Feeling closeness, that, cuddliness, feeling connected to your partner, being able to make your partner feel good. These are all things that can be pleasurable about sex. So yeah, satisfaction isn't just one thing. I think the pleasure piece is really interesting. You can be satisfied with your sex life, even if it's not super pleasurable for you. As I said, if this is something where, it's making your partner happy, you like the end result of, cuddling at the end, that's still something that can be immensely satisfactory for people. The pleasure bit is a bit more embodied in my definition. So something that feels good in your body. And again, that doesn't have to be orgasm. It doesn't have to be, whatever anyone else experiences, but just a moment where you feel in your body these feelings of enjoyment, joy, contentment, etc., that can come from all different parts of sex.
So should a person say, like, should there be no lying? Like, was it good for you? Should a person? No, it wasn't good. I mean, should you do that, or?
Yeah, I think in a way, of course, I don't want anyone just like insulting their partner. I think being able to say how sex felt for you in a way that is like non-judgmental, to say, oh yeah, no, I didn't have an orgasm, but I still really enjoyed being close to you. I still really enjoyed that I knew you were really turned on and attracted to me. I think those are really important conversations to have, because sex doesn't end in an orgasm for, honestly, most people. That's not like an always thing. And I think lying about having an orgasm for your partner's ego, I don't think that that's a healthy thing in general.
So these are things that SHIP would help with.
Yeah, being able to have those conversations, building those communication skills, and being able to pry apart that, yeah, sex is more than just orgasm. Sex is so much more than that.
So as technology continues to advance, there's numerous innovations and in the field of sexual health and pleasure. Could you discuss some of the most promising developments that are out there?
Yeah, I'm a very big supporter of technology. I think, as with all things, especially technology, there are pros and cons. I think being able to use technology to improve our relationship to sex is something that's so cool and so exciting. There are so many wonderful sex toys out there. I would encourage you to find your local sex toy shop and go in and talk to the people who work there. Chances are they're going to be very well informed and very nice and will help you find the sex toy that is right for you, that's going to be fun and add something to your sex life. And there have been a lot of advancements in that technology to have, better vibrators, better materials that are going to feel better for your body, etc. I think the internet also is such an amazing tool for all things. Again, can sometimes be harmful. I'm definitely not a, be online all the time person. I want everyone out there touching grass and actually communicating with people face to face IRL. But being able to find sexual partners online, I think, is such a huge development, especially for LGBTQ people. In decades past, I can only imagine being in a small town or rural area and feeling like nobody was interested in what you were interested in, and whether that was because of your, sexual identity or a kink that you might be into. I can't imagine how isolating that must have felt to have trouble finding partners who are interested in the same thing. Now you can get online and find, anybody who's into anything. You will find them on the internet. And I think that's really, really cool that a lot of people who have maybe more niche sexual interests now can use technology to find people who are interested in the same thing. So that's really, really exciting.
And so I see where you're coming from. Like, I get, like, how would you find those people before? But I also find it so scary, the internet. I mean, I mean, like, from that point of view, it's not like you're just going to meet someone to buy a couch in a parking lot somewhere. You're looking for someone to share something very intimate with, that over the World Wide Web. Who knows if that person is really who they say they are. Do you have any tips or anything for people out looking?
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting point, that this is an issue of safety and kind of part of that, sexual health plan. If you are someone who wants to meet up with people from the internet, yeah, making sure to have a safety plan, maybe telling friends or a trusted person where you're going to be. I know on my phone, I'll use Find My Friends when I have friends going out on dates, so I can, check up and make sure they got home safe, etc. So using, sharing your location with friends, being able to look people up online, see if they, are who they say they are, see if their identity is, actually true. And then using common sense, I think, in a lot of ways as well. If you're meeting up with people you don't know for sex or just for dating, being comfortable with the location that you're going to, maybe, meeting somewhere where that there'll be people around, etc. So using kind of some of those classic dating safety tips as well.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it is, even if you are meeting up with a stranger, making sure that you do feel safe, even if it is like the element of danger might be something that is attractive in some ways, and that taboo is attractive in some ways. That's what, turns a lot of people on, is having anonymous sex with strangers, but still finding ways to make that as safe as possible, and realizing that you always can say no. You always can stop. And then it's the responsibility of that person to hear that no and to hear that stop.
You were saying how online can be daunting. I'm going back to her answer. I think walking into a sex toy shop could be pretty. I mean, I'm guessing there's probably any and everything there, depending on the size of the store that you're going into. Just as a person who's like, okay, I want to try something. It's like, where do you go? And how do you know when that associate isn't just trying to sell the biggest commission item or whatever, is the best spiff going on? So
Sure.
I could see that.
And it can be a bit intimidating. I'd say maybe do some research first before you go in with what you might be interested in. And I generally do advocate for going in person to a local sex toy store versus buying online, buying on Amazon. Because first of all, you kind of know what you're getting when you go in person. Generally, actual physical realtors will sell higher quality products because there isn't a lot of testing done on a lot of these products. They sometimes are made out of materials that are frankly not body safe. So I, advocate for you to make sure you're getting things that are high quality materials, which oftentimes will cost a bit more. So that's something to be aware of too. The cheapest one is not always the best one, especially if it's something that you're putting inside of your body. So to make sure that it is a material that is going to be body safe, something that's, high quality silicone. And same thing with condoms, same thing with lubricant, buying something that, isn't going to irritate you. So that's something that a salesperson at a store can potentially talk you through and help you with. And just to remember that, this is their job. They're not there to judge you. People go in there all day. Everyone's there for the same reason. There's no shame in that.
That's true. I just used to be a salesperson, not sexual, but I knew when the bills are coming. I wouldn't steer someone wrong, but there'd be a lower cost item that I could have sold as well.
And in my head, I'm not picturing Brittany in there, like really worried about everyone's sexual health. I don't know.
I think you would be surprised if you're going to like small local realtor. Oftentimes they are, much more informed about these.
I hope so, but yes, I'm just sort of reinforcing that you should do a little research before you go.
But I would have assumed before talking to you that anything sold for whatever pleasure I'm aiming at would be body safe.
Oh,
I wouldn't even, I would think, oh, why would they sell it if it wasn't body safe? I know other things I'd be a little, nervous about, but when it came to this topic, I don't think I would have ever thought that.
Well, I think it's a symptom of, since these topics are so taboo, there's not a lot of regulation on these items. So yeah, I would say generally, this is going to sound, maybe obvious, but anything that has a scent, when you like open up something that's plastic and it has that like plasticky scent, that's usually not a good sign. That's not something you want to put inside of your body. So something that is, like a cheaper plastic is a hard pass. And then when it comes to lubricants as well, anything that has a smell is usually something that I would not want people to use inside their bodies. So to find a good water-based or silicone-based lubricant, and there's some really, really great ones on the market. But yeah, anything that, that is scented, that is glittering, that has like a tingling sensation, that's usually something that I would say stay away from.
Really? That is surprising because I see those things at CVS or something like that, or excuse me, when you walk in the aisle of a convenience store, you see.
I have to say, I think most like pharmacy brand or drugstore brand lubricants are not the best ones out there. I think go to a specialty store generally, as opposed to the ones that are at CVS or Walgreens.
So for any organization or college campus that is listening right now and would like to get in touch with you to start a partnership or to have you come in and speak, what's the best way to contact you?
You can go to our website, which is weknowship.org, or you can email me at Brittany, BRITTANY, at weknowship.org. And I would love to hear from anyone. I always love having these conversations, love meeting other people doing similar or very different work. So please reach out.
Thank you so much. This has been very informative. I gotta give Greg props. He did a super job with the questions. I'm gonna go give him praise in the office now.
Well, we are going to, be extending our coalition invitation out to you. I think you'd be a great addition. And I think a partnership would be great. So we could continue to work together and get all this information out there.
A partnership.
A partnership.
Yeah.
Thank you
so
very much.
Brittany.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.